Hey everyone, I'm Joe. Today, I'm here to do my last entry of my series of reviews leading up to Avengers Endgame with the long overdue review of Avengers Infinity War. I wanted to review this at the time when it came out, but a lot of stuff was going on at the time for me, and I just did not have the energy for it. But with Avengers Endgame coming up soon, I now have an excuse. So, with spoilers of course, let's talk about Avengers Infinity War, directed by the Russo brothers and starring everyone. You don't need me to tell you who's here and who's not, except for maybe Ant-Man or Hawkeye. But yeah, just about everybody's in this movie. And it tells a story of the Avengers and the Guardians of the Galaxy teaming up together, scattered in certain spots across the universe, to stop the mighty Thanos from obtaining all the Infinity Stones and accomplishing his goal of wiping out half the population in the universe in order to achieve balance that he sees fit. After about a year or so listening to people's thoughts on Avengers Infinity War and going over my own personal theories and talking with other people, I really don't know where to begin with Avengers Infinity War. This movie, I think, might just be the best Avengers film, even more so than the first one so far. Watching this movie last night, let me tell you, I cannot even imagine the amount of work and effort that went into this movie with the Russo brothers and every other member of the production team involved, and the actors. Oh, seriously, this movie is like, it's almost like a mini-series contained into like a 2.5-hour movie, because there's so many people in here. And going into it, I thought, how in the world can they balance all of these characters? And we've said the same thing about Days of Future Past, Civil War. This movie just about manages to balance every single major character. And even though it feels slightly clunky in the first act, they did a great job of giving every character a moment to shine, even if it's for like just one scene. Somehow, the Russo brothers and the writers managed to make it work. So the movie opens up with Thanos aboard the ship that Thor and Loki were on, with the other people from Asgard after Asgard was destroyed. Thanos and his personal guard have stormed aboard the ship and have killed most of the Asgardians on board, including Heimdall, who manages to get the Hulk by the use of dark magic back to Earth. Which, now I've seen it, I think I finally have the answer. Well, how did Thor get back to Earth? So I guess Heimdall must have had some kind of hand in that, who knows. So most of the Asgardian people are slaughtered. Thanos tortures Thor, and Loki decides to give up the Tesseract, even though they try to lie and say it was destroyed on Asgard. Loki uses it as a distraction and unleashes the Hulk with the "Your optimism is misplaced, Asgardian." Well, for one thing, I'm not Asgardian.
We have the Hulk.
And it's a pretty cool fight scene, but that's really the only time you see Hulk. You only get Hulk for about maybe 1 minute entirely. And for the rest of the movie, it's Bruce Banner trying to get the Hulk to come out, but the Hulk just won't do it, and trying to figure out how to be some kind of an asset to the Avengers on Earth. And it's kind of disappointing, but on the other hand, I can see why the filmmakers did it, because one, they had to make the Avengers look like underdogs to some degree to Thanos. And also, talking with a friend of mine about a few months ago when we were talking about Infinity War, I was mentioning to him, like, why did the Hulk not come out when Bruce Banner wanted him to? And my friend said that he read a theory explaining that the Hulk more than likely was terrified when Thanos nearly killed him, and he was afraid to come out because he never faced up against anybody that brought him to that point. Yeah, that was the first villain he fought that legitimately almost killed him. So yeah, I could see why he might not have wanted to come out after that, at least for a while. I'm willing to bet that in Endgame we're going to see him come out in some shape or form, but we'll wait and see what happens in Endgame, just saying. So Thanos manages to get his hand on the Space Stone, which is buried in the Tesseract, and it's one of 6 stones that he needs in order to fill up his gauntlet in order to accomplish his goal. Loki, in a last-ditch effort to try to kill Thanos, fails, and Thanos kills Loki right in front of Thor and makes Thor watch his own brother die. So Loki dies. For now, at least. Who knows? From what I heard, Tom Hiddleston is confirmed to appear in Endgame in some fashion, whether he's alive, whether he's dead, even though later on Thor says, I think it might be for real this time. We will see. But it's still a really hard thing to watch, because even though Loki was a villain for a good majority of the MCU, you do kind of feel for him, and you do want him to be okay, at least I do anyway. And to see him die like that, oh man. And it shows you just how powerful and scary this guy Thanos is. In fact, when he first shows up on screen holding Thor by his head, it's terrifying. I thought that Loki was a legitimate threat in the first Avengers, but this one, watching this in the theater, and even watching it a couple times since then, including last night, I keep thinking, how in the world can they beat this dude? I don't see any possibilities. So Thanos and his guys escape, the ship blows up, sending Thor out into space, and Hulk manages to land on Earth after the dark magic conjured up by Heimdall, and he lands in Doctor Strange's house. And Strange manages to track down Tony Stark in Central Park, where he's having a little date with Pepper Potts. And they head back to Doctor Strange's mansion in order to discuss the Infinity Stones, where Bruce tells Tony,
He said Loki. The attack on New York, that's him.
This is it.
seeing Tony's head focus on Bruce when he says that, whoa. I love that moment because he's finally realizing, this is really happening. This is really happening. And then he starts to lean on this one cauldron. Did you seriously just say hitherto undreamt of? Are you seriously leaning on the cauldron of the cosmos?
Is that what it is? I'm going to allow that.
But Doctor Strange has his hands on the time stone, which is in his little necklace thing or whatever. Tony suggests, why not just throw it down the garbage disposal and be done with it? No can do. We swore an oath to protect the time stone with our lives. What is your job exactly? To protect your reality, douchebag. So Tony, after some encouragement from Bruce Banner, tries to call Steve Rogers, but then they hear something going on outside. An alien ship shows up. Thanos' goons have showed up in order to claim the time stone. Bruce, Strange, Tony, and Wong confront them on the street, and a big battle ensues, and later on, Spider-Man shows up after seeing the spaceship coming into the city.
What's the matter with you kids? You never seen a spaceship before?
Speaking of the action, the Russo brothers do an excellent job with the action in this movie. They make it feel grand and big, but at the same time really grounded and kind of realistic in a way. Even though you've got these larger-than-life characters and these super-powered beings, the way it's filmed and the way they manage to ground it, you can buy it as a legitimate thing that's going on. So Doctor Strange is taken away onto the ship. Spider-Man tries to bring him back, but he's then brought up to the ship as well. Tony flies after them, and he sneaks aboard the ship after having a little last call with Pepper, which doesn't really go so well. And in the process, he gives Spider-Man his new Iron Spider suit, which I think looks pretty cool, to be honest. Even though people will argue that he's just a protege for Tony Stark, blah, blah, blah. But still, it's a cool scene. I like it. Mr. Stark, it smells like a new car in here. Meanwhile, down on Earth, Bruce sends out a phone call to Steve Rogers with the emergency number that he gave to Tony, and we see Cap, Black Widow, and Falcon save Scarlet Witch and Vision from these two alien goons that Thanos sent to get the one stone planted in Vision's forehead. And one cool thing that we get to see is that Vision is evolving into a human, like legitimately into a human form, which Tony mentions to Bruce earlier on in the movie, that I'm presuming that he was using it as a disguise? Probably. I mean, you take a look at Vision. Yeah, I mean, it's hard not to draw attention to yourself when you look like that. And there's a romance developing between Wanda and Vision, which was hinted at in Civil War. Yeah, whatever. I mean, it is what it is. But then another big action scene happens where the two aliens show up and try to get the stone from Vision. Wanda fights them off, and then Captain America shows up on this train platform. And then he, Natasha, and Sam manage to fight off the aliens. And Cap's entrance into this scene... Captain on deck! Good morning, sir! Oh god, what am I doing? And he's got a beard. Well, military veterans tend to grow beards when they're out of the military. It's not uncommon. I tried. Didn't look too good on me, personally, but whatever. That's another story. And then we later see the Guardians responding to a stress call, which turns out to be a wreckage of the Asgardian ship that Thor was on, and they recover Thor in the process, who was knocked out. And this is one of the best parts of the movie, seeing Thor interact with the Guardians, and seeing Thor becoming a more comical presence in Thor Ragnarok, and seeing the Guardians being the most comical aspect of the MCU. It just makes for a perfect fit. And Groot is apparently hitting puberty, and one of the most saltiest teenagers you'll ever see.
Groot.
And Groot.
Whoa!
Hey.
Got some acorns on you, kid.
Keep it up, and I'm gonna smash that thing to pieces! So as Thor's recovering, he's telling the Guardians what's going on with Thanos. Gamora, being the former daughter of Thanos, almost leads to a big fight between her and Thor. But then Star-Lord points out, hey, she hates him just as much as you do. Families can be tough. So Thor comes up with a plan to get a new hammer, recruits some help along the way, like Rocket and Groot, while the rest of the Guardians plan on going to nowhere to meet up with the Collector, and they go on their separate ways. And it's got some of the funniest parts in this movie. There's so many funny parts in here, but Thor with the Guardians adds to some of the funniest moments in the movie overall.
Never torment the universe.
Rabbit is correct and clearly the smartest among you.
Rabbit.
That gets me every single time. First time I saw this, I just lost it, and people in the theater lost it too. Man's muscles are made of some kind of intergalactic fiber. Stop massaging his muscles. That sounds like a made-up word. Oh, what's it made up? Then we get to see Iron Man and Spider-Man meet up with each other and argue about why Spider-Man decided to show up. You can't be a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man if there's no neighborhood, and it's kind of your fault. What'd you just say? So they come up with a plan to get Doctor Strange out of captivity, who's being interrogated by the Squidward guy. By the way, when Tony Stark called that guy Squidward, oh god, that was perfect. And Peter comes up with this plan using a pop culture reference.
Okay, you ever see this really old movie, Aliens?
It's not that old, Peter. I'm guessing that's a recurring thing in Russo brother Avengers movies. In Civil War, he says, you ever see that really old movie, Empire Strikes Back? I wonder if he's gonna do a similar thing in Avengers Endgame somehow. Back to the future. Who knows, it might not be that way, but here's hoping. They manage to rescue Doctor Strange and kick that Squidward guy out into space to his death. So they try to come up with a plan to beat Thanos, while Spider-Man's just standing nearby trying to figure out what's going on. Hi, I'm Peter. Oh, we're using our fake names? I'm Spider-Man. Then we get to see Cap and the others from Scotland arrive at the Avengers facility in upstate New York, with War Machine having a call with Secretary Ross, and Cap later reveals himself to Secretary Ross's hologram.
Arrest them.
All over it.
So glad that Rhodey finally came to his senses. Bruce Banner shows up not too long after that, and they all try to figure out what to do with Vision and the Mind Stone. Vision offers to sacrifice himself, but then the others suggest that, you know what, that's not a good idea. Let's take you to Wakanda. Vision agrees, and they all head to Wakanda to meet up with the Black Panther, where Bucky's also hiding, called the White Wolf. Okay, having said all of that, as I said earlier, the movie does have some clunky pacing issues, and it's really from that first act. Introducing all these big characters, every character at least feels like a really big action sequence introduction, which is really cool, but at the same time, it's really drawn out. And watching it last night, it feels just a little bit exhausting. Not in a terrible way, but it can feel a little bit like, okay, can we get to the point here? We gotta stop Thanos. It does go on a little too long. It feels like a big action scene next to one, and it doesn't always flow perfectly together, but by the time the second act comes in, it all starts to flow a little bit better. But that first act is where the movie's biggest issue is. And some people could argue that, well, there's no character development in these movies. Well, have you seen the previous MCU movies? We've already had like 10 years worth of material to develop these characters, similar to the Harry Potter films leading up to Deathly Hallows Part 2. We have the first 7 Harry Potter films. Now we're in the last one. Now it's time to go all out with the action, and I think this one is a prime example of that, and I think Avengers Endgame is going to continue that trend. Star-Lord, Drax, Mantis, and Gamora all head to nowhere. On the way, Gamora makes Star-Lord promise her that he will kill her if Thanos manages to get his hands on her. And there's somewhat of a disagreement because he doesn't want to go through with it, but the reason is she knows something that Thanos doesn't, and she doesn't want it to fall into his hands. So he promises, and they arrive at nowhere to see Thanos interrogating the Collector. Drax sees Thanos, and knowing that Thanos was the one that killed Drax's home planet, including his family, in an act of rage, he loses his crap and tries to go after Thanos, but then their cover's blown. Gamora supposedly kills Thanos by stabbing him in the neck with a knife that he gave to her as a kid. Then it turns out, none of that stuff was really happening. Nowhere has already been destroyed. The Collector, more than likely, is dead. I mean, after all that, yeah. There's no way he's gonna survive. The whole place is on fire, and Thanos is actually still alive. Drax charges after Thanos, but then Thanos turns him into building blocks. Mantis turns into these silly strings. That is just really bizarre, but also kind of scary, because now he's got the Reality Stone. He can mess up reality and make you go, what the heck? He grabs Gamora. Gamora tries to get Star-Lord to shoot her, even though he's really hesitant to. I told you to go right. I told you to go right. I will blow that nutsack of a chin clean off. Chris Pratt never disappoints with the fat man humor. Then he decides to shoot Gamora, but then when he tries to shoot Gamora,
I like you.
ugh. And speaking of Thanos, I was really concerned that Thanos was just going to come off as this big purple punchy guy with not that much character to him. But in this movie, they explore Thanos' mind and his personality, showing him his backstory and how he adopted Gamora. When Gamora's planet was being invaded by Thanos' army, she's separated from her mother. Thanos sees her fighting off some of his guards, and he likes that fighting spirit that he sees in her, and then he takes her under his wing. And then we later see at his hideout, having a discussion with Gamora. He believes in mass genocide by wiping out half the population on said planet in order to achieve balance to the world, to the universe, basically. Once he gets all the Infinity Stones, all he has to do is snap his fingers. Half of the universe's population will be completely wiped out. And the way they do it, you do see where he's coming from, but then you also recognize, no, man. I mean, I see why you do it. You have a point, but you're killing people. Not just bad people, but good people. You don't need to hear me say it, but those are the best kinds of villains. You understand why they think they're doing the right thing, but you also recognize that, yeah, I can't really get behind them because they're causing a lot of harm. So after he tortures Nebula, he makes Gamora take her to this place where they can get the Soul Stone, and they later run into this mysterious guard figure in this hooded cloak type of getup, and it's later revealed to be the Red Skull from the first Captain America. Seeing him in the theater the first time, I went, oh my god. And most of the people in the audience were freaking out. So now we know where he's been this entire time. More than likely, when the Tesseract was acting up on that plane that he and Cap were fighting on, very likely he was transported to another dimension, eventually ending up on that planet. Although, how did he manage to survive without any food or water? Alright, he's on that planet, so whatever. Thanos goes up to the ledge and then learns from the Red Skull that in order to get the Soul Stone, he has to make a sacrifice, sacrificing what he loves the most. Therefore, he kills Gamora. Not in cold blood though, it actually hurts him to do so. And you could see it in his face and how he doesn't want to do it, but in order to achieve his goal, he knows that he has to do it. And seeing him tear up, I almost found myself kind of feeling sorry for Thanos, but then I went, oh, wait a minute, he's the villain. Never mind. Josh Brolin, who plays him, his acting, oh god, that is incredible. Even though it's a motion capture effect, still spot on. So Thor, Rocket, and Groot show up to this old space station out in the middle of space in order to create Thor's new hammer, the Stormbreaker, where they run into this giant dwarf played by Peter Dinklage. Game of Thrones fans will delight in seeing him in this movie. And then we learn from this character that he was forced to create the gauntlet that Thanos is using in order to get the stones, and he created it thinking that his own people were going to be spared, but Thanos ended up killing them anyway. He manages to get Peter Dinklage's character to start creating the Stormbreaker, but in order to do that, they have to wake up the dead star that's hanging out in the middle of the space station. And they manage to get the energy started up, but then they realize that they have to keep this door open in order to provide it enough power in order to create the new hammer.
It'll kill you. Only if I die.
Yes, that's what killing you means.
And speaking of Thor, as the movies have gone on in the last couple years, Thor has just become just about as interesting as he was in the first one for me, maybe even more so than he was in the beginning. After everything that he's been through, losing his mom, his father, losing his home, his brother, he's really lost a lot, and he's lamenting about everything that's happening to him, and Rocket goes over to him to give him a pep talk. Alright, I guess I gotta be the captain. The thing I like about that is that even though Thor is clearly upset about what he's lost, he's trying to act all tough and macho about it, like, what else can I lose? And Rocket gives him this fake eye.
Thank you, sweet rabbit.
That's never gonna get old. I love that rabbit joke. Okay, moving on. Thor survives, the Stormbreaker's created, and then he heads to Earth to help the Avengers. Strange, Spider-Man, and Iron Man end up on Titan, where the ship was going, and they run into the remaining Guardian. And the thing with this movie is the Russo brothers and the writers, they pick certain characters to be placed with other characters to make the best dynamics, like having the two geniuses with goatees bouncing off of each other, and putting Thor with the Guardians having the two most comical aspects of the MCU, and seeing Star-Lord partnering up with Tony Stark. It's really cool. Where's Gamora? Who is Gamora? I'll do you better. What is Gamora? What master do you serve? What master do I serve? What am I supposed to say? Jesus? Then later on, they try to come up with a plan to fight Thanos when he comes by, and it contains my favorite moment in this whole movie.
Like in Footloose, the movie?
Exactly like Footloose. Is it still the greatest movie in history?
It never was.
Don't encourage.
And the look on Star-Lord's face when Peter says that. Oh god, that is great. And you know, the thing with this movie's humor is that even though the movie is very dour and it doesn't seem like there's any hope in sight, the movie does a good job of lightening up the tone. It's still a fun experience. It knows how to have fun. It's not like you watch it and go, oh my god, oh no. They find the right balance of dark and light in this movie, as a movie like this definitely should. Then back on Earth in Wakanda, decide to protect the area with the Wakandan army, and Thanos' goons show up. In fact, when you take a close look at them, they actually look like Venom. Wonder if Venom is actually a thing in this universe. Probably not, because of this whole Sony Marvel thing, but whatever. So the battle begins. The Wakandans and aliens charge at each other when a hole opens up in the shield. The best part of this sequence is when you see all the Wakandans advancing, and Cap and Black Panther are just running faster than everybody else, like shoo. That's what I need. I need that intensity. Similar to J.J. Abrams' intensity in some of his movies, especially with The Force Awakens and what you saw in the recent trailer for Rise of Skywalker. I need that intensity, and it does not disappoint. And then Thor shows up with the Stormbreaker in order to help the rest of the Avengers. New haircut. I see you've copied my beard. I am Groot. I am Steve Rogers. Then on Titan, Thanos shows up to get the Time Stone, and then a big fight ensues where they actually legitimately kind of overpower him and almost get the Infinity Gauntlet off. But then, as Mantis is reading his mind, trying to subdue him, Star-Lord learns that Gamora is dead because of Thanos. I hate this part, but at the same time I do like it because, hold on, I understand why people flipped out at the time, and trust me, I totally get it. I totally do. Because his reaction, he basically causes the massacre of half of the population in the universe. But after everything that this guy's been through, losing his mom, finding out his biological father was a monster and having to kill him, losing Yondu, in many ways his adoptive father, Gamora was Peter Quill's last hope for happiness. And then having lost all that happiness, and Star-Lord is probably the most human of all these characters, and he hasn't really gone through a whole lot at this point, as opposed to someone like Tony Stark, who's been through a lot more traumatic situations. And the scene isn't drawn out as much as I remembered. It's actually pretty quick with Star-Lord's reaction to the whole thing. And I think that if any character had to do that, Star-Lord was probably the perfect fit. Because as I said, he's the most human out of all these characters, and he hasn't really been through as much at this point. It's still frustrating though, because it was right there. You couldn't have waited a couple more seconds. Thanos manages to get the gauntlet back on, and then he forces Doctor Strange to give him the Time Stone. And also real quick, Doctor Strange sees all the possible outcomes against Thanos. Is there anyone that we win? One. Which begs the question, him giving up the Time Stone, that was probably the only way to defeat Thanos for good. Now that we've had some time to process it, it probably was. Thanos then heads to Earth to grab the Mind Stone. Unfortunately, Vision and Wanda are forced to escape the facility that they're in. They head out into the wilderness and Thanos shows up to grab the Mind Stone. Scarlet Witch is forced to kill Vision, and every Avenger that comes up against Thanos doesn't stand a chance. And even Captain America almost legitimately manages to beat Thanos, only by holding back his hand. And seeing Thanos' reaction to this, it's like, what the heck? Seeing a little bit of that super soldier coming out of Captain America. Maybe Endgame will show that full potential. We will see. He gets to Scarlet Witch with the Time Stone. He reverses time. Oh no! And he gets all the stones. And then Thor shows up, throws the Stormbreaker right into Thanos' chest.
Should have gone for the head.
And then...
No, 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 no.
Groot.
This whole ending is just... oh my god. Oh my god. This is how I reacted when we saw Bucky disappear. Bucky fades into dust, Scarlet Witch, Falcon, half of the Wakandans, Black Panther, Groot, Mantis, Drax, Star-Lord, Doctor Strange, and the one that always kills me. Sorry. Tears my heart out every time. And then it ends with Thanos sitting on his porch, enjoying the sunset, finally getting his peace. And then the movie ends. Not before one post-credit scene, when we see half the people on Earth fading into dust.
Oh no. Mother.
Finally! Finally! He almost said it, but finally they got him to at least say portion of it. Oh, if only Marvel could allow him to say the entire word, but that's never gonna happen. Let me tell you, this whole ending, when I first saw this, once the credits started rolling, I sat there like this. What just happened? After having some time to process it for a couple days afterward, I knew that they were gonna come back. But just saying, in the moment, it was so shocking. The bad guy actually wins for the first time in a Marvel movie, and half of the Avengers are gone. The new Avengers are gone, the new characters, because all that's left are the original Avengers, which makes you think that, oh, so there's going to be some kind of a sacrifice in order to get the newer team members back. Considering that a lot of these actors' contracts are up, like Chris Evans, Robert Downey Jr., and Chris Hemsworth, although he might come back for another Thor movie, but that's another story. You gotta write these characters out somehow. Like many other people have said in the last year, we're gonna see pretty soon with Endgame, but I really do not know where exactly they're gonna go. And I'm excited to see what's gonna happen. I kind of don't want to see what's gonna happen because I don't know who's gonna die. I mean, is Captain America gonna die? Is Iron Man gonna die? What's gonna happen? Please don't kill Captain America. Don't kill anybody, please. We will see in a few days, and I just hope that they can make the best outcome possible. The whole thing with that ending, I saw this review from Hollywood Reporter or whatever, said that it was basically the Empire Strikes Back ending, but on steroids. And I would agree with that. The biggest and best cliffhanger I've ever seen in a movie by far. Thankfully, we only had to wait a year and not 3 years like people did with Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. But it's still one of those endings that makes you go, no, no, no! And there's only one sliver of hope left in the ending, with the post-credit scene. That beeper that Nick Fury was using before he faded away, the camera zooms down, and then you see Captain Marvel's logo, and the music go, da 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 da, makes you go, whoever that is, he or she might be the last hope for the universe. Oh, and one more thing that I forgot to mention. The Hulk is basically nerfed in this movie, but I'm glad that they gave Mark Ruffalo something to do at the climax of the movie by going into the Hulkbuster outfit, which is the thing that defeated him in the last Avengers movie. And it was kind of underpowered, yeah, but the thing is, Tony Stark was the one who built it, and he knew how to use it. Bruce Banner doesn't really know how to use it. He was kind of learning on the fly how to use it. And again, I like they gave him something to do in the final battle, rather than just having him sit behind on the sidelines just watching everything happen. And Mark Ruffalo's got some funny moments in here too, trying to get the Hulk to come out like, come on, Hulk, what are you doing? Come on, man. No. What do you mean, no? Dude, you're embarrassing me in front of the wizards. Overall, I think Avengers Infinity War is an absolute blast. It's probably the best Avengers movie by far, even though I like the first one just a tad more, because it was the first time for me seeing something like the Avengers happening, and that was really cool to see. I think this one is probably the better movie overall. We'll see how Endgame turns out, but this movie I think is an absolute blast, and it knows the best ways to turn you on your head while still giving the audience what they want to see. So those are my thoughts on Avengers Infinity War, and now, the next one, we're in the Endgame. We're Avengers Endgame. We're finally here. What are your guys' thoughts on Infinity War? Did you love it, like it, think it's alright, or do you hate it? Whatever the case is, comment below and tell me your thoughts, and I will see you all very soon for Avengers Endgame.